One thing Bobby Wagner's like, obviously the records in this division aren't maybe as good as they have been the last couple of years at this point in time. That was widely considered one of the best divisions in football. But he's like, I still, like, on a weekly basis, you turn on, like, these teams. He's like, the Cardinals just get Hopkins back. And all of a sudden, if they win this weekend, which I don't think would be crazy on the road at Minnesota when everyone's going to be picking the Vikings off a bye. Well, Arizona's kind of coming off a bye too. Do you know their record? I heard a stat today that the Cardinals with DeAndre Hopkins averaged 27 points a game, and without him averaged 18 in a lot over the life of his 3 years with Kyler Murray. So it's a big deal. And Seattle, you and I were talking before we hopped on, obviously play the Giants, which is crazy. This would have been the classic game if you just like looked over the schedule, like on this given week, you're like, yeah, not watching this one. I mean, if Seattle wins this game, they're 5-3 and clearly in first place. And like you said, the Niners and the Rams, like if the Rams were to win this game, the Niners would be in last place.
Well, I'll give you a stat on that Giants Seahawks game. It's the only game in the league this weekend between two teams with winning records.
If I would have told you at the beginning of the season that coming into week 8, that the Giants at Seattle, in terms of the playoffs and being top in their division, would be dramatically bigger than the Packers going to the Bills, you would have been like, shut up, right?
Yeah. Now, you could argue it's the Packers-Bills game is pretty big because the Packers win it. They're 4-4. It'd be a hell of a win for them.
But wouldn't you argue that at the beginning of the season, we talked about it with the Chiefs-Bills, right? Probably the number 1 draft pick, just Bills at Chiefs. I mean, that might just be the best game on paper. Wouldn't Packers at Bills been probably a top 5 game on paper?
Yeah.
It still is. I mean, Sunday night has it for a reason, but Giants, Seattle, it's weird. It doesn't even feel like it's saying it, but if Seattle wins this game 5-3, they're in pretty incredible position. Like they're just not going away. They've already got a 2-game lead on being over, a 2-game cushion over being over 500, right? I mean, for the Niners to get 2 games over 500, they have to win 3 games in a row. Like, so it just gets to the swing. Like the NFL is not baseball where you just get to play every week. And I'm not a Kyler and Cliff guy. Everyone knows that. But holy shit, I mean, they win this weekend. It feels like you could just fucking light them on fire, dump them, and the season was over. And all of a sudden they're 4-4, and they really haven't played anyone in their division yet, guy.
I know. And I, as I said the other day, at this point, I have a hard time envisioning the Niners sweeping the Cardinals and beating the Seahawks again. Now, I don't have a hard time envisioning them beating the Seahawks. But if you just said, are they going to win all 3 of those games? At this point, you'd have to say, no, they're not. Now, if they win, if they beat the Rams, they hit the bye at 500. They play the Chargers, the Cardinals, the Saints, the Dolphins after that.
Who's this? The Niners?
The Niners, yeah.
Yeah.
They play the Bucks, which I don't care what happens. And again, we'll see what happens Thursday night. I think the Bucks are going to be formidable. You're not chalking them up. But you're not chalking up the Seahawks. You're not chalking up the Cardinals. You're not chalking up the Chargers. But those are all games that the Niners are very capable of winning, especially if they come out of the bye a little healthier. So here's the other thing. If the Rams win, now I know the Rams won the playoff game last year, but the Niners have owned them, and they continue to own them in the regular season. 7 straight in the regular season. So the Rams can kind of break that spell a little bit. I think that's probably part of the reason why the Niners felt so comfortable kind of just talking about the Rams the way they talk about the Rams, is that they have beat them a lot.
Well, it feel a little bit like the Titans and the Colts. It just feels like every time I watch Titans and the Colts, I don't really watch it, but every time I check in on the scores, Titans win every single time. Yeah. It feels like they just dominate them. The difference is like the Titans go to the playoffs every year. The Colts do not. Like the Rams have been really formidable. If they do win this game and they've won 4 straight years of sweeping the Rams, how many teams that have been 4 straight years as a playoff team? Now, who knows if the Rams end up making the playoffs, get swept every year by a team in their division. Like that's probably pretty. We'd have to get some ESPN stats and info, which I'm sure will come out if the Niners do it. There'll probably be some crazy data behind it because it would feel pretty unprecedented. The Lions get swept all the time by the Packers. Like, oh yeah, no shit, or the Bears. Like we get it. The Rams, when they're winning double-digit games every single year, get swept by a team in their division. This game is massive, obviously, divisionally. Looking at the Cardinals' schedule, after this week, they do go Seattle, Rams, Niners. So, like, in about 4 weeks, I think we're going to get a lot of clarity on the Cardinals. And like you said, the Niners it will be a major kick in the nuts going to the bye at 3-5. It would be, listen, I mean, there are some shitty teams. Obviously, the Jags are struggling, and who knows, they might lose. I guess if the Broncos were to lose this week and the Niners were to lose this week, you might give the nod to the Broncos, just given that they're 2-6. That's pretty crazy. But they did beat the Niners. So the Niners are 3-5, who had Super Bowl aspirations and universally were getting picked to make the playoffs, and are 3-5, and one of their losses is to the 2-6 Broncos. Like, that's, I would put them head for head right there with the Broncos as a disappointment, because you could argue, and I kind of did, like, are we sure Nate Hackett? And it's kind of playing out that way.
I did argue. I said I thought they'd finish last in their division.
You did. I don't think I did. So that's a good pick.
But so my point is, I would say the Niners are a bigger disappointment.
So 2-6 Broncos, 3-5. You would give the Niners bigger nod?
Without question, absolutely, not even close. If they lose this game, biggest disappointment of the first half of the season.
I agree.
Still could dig out of it, but it's like, how many times you got to win games eventually? 0-7. Oh, the thing about the 7 wins in a row too is, like, it's not. The last game was 24-9, kind of misleading, right?
How the Niners win 7 games in a row and they went 3-5? How'd they even pull off 10? How's that even possible?
What 7 in a row against the Rams in the regular season?
I guess you just need to win 7 more games out of the 10 or out of the 9. So you basically have to go. I'm saying to get to 10-7 when you're 3-5, you have to go 7-2.
Yeah,
which doesn't feel
hard.
Like they did, but I guess they did it.
Yeah. But it's not as if these Rams games are just, you beat a team 7 times in a row, you think you just must kick their ass every time. One thing, the wins for the Niners, one common thread, one thing that pops up from time to time is not just a pick, but a pick 6, right? Hufanga had the pick 6 in the last meeting. Niners got to the third quarter with the lead, which turns out to be a very key statistic for the 49ers. But they scored two offensive touchdowns the last time they played the Rams. Debo had the big one. Remember, Jeff Wilson had a big run in the game on a good drive. It wasn't like some freak thing, but the Debo play was a 3rd and 3. Robbie Gould hit a field goal, and Talanoa Hufanga had a pick 6. Like, that's how they beat the Rams 24-9. 2 stats for you. Both those Niner touchdowns were from outside of the red zone, right? Pretty sure the Jeff Wilson Jr. run was like a 35-yarder, 32-yarder, and Debo's play was 57. The Niners had red zone trouble last week. We've seen them have red zone touchdown trouble. 2 stats on the Rams. Number 1, the Rams have allowed just 4 red zone touchdowns this year. That's pretty good in only 12 red zone trips. The Rams are the only team in the NFL that have not yet benefited from a pass interference penalty on the opposing defense. Think about
That's
that.
pretty crazy.
That makes no sense. Now, maybe they've declined 1 or 2. That is a crazy stat. But the Niners defense right now feels like it's at a fork in the road, John. They got their asses kicked. And there have been a lot of numbers since the Chiefs game about how historically bad it was. It was like DVOA, worst defense, 8th worst defensive performance since 1981 or something like that. I don't know if you saw that one, but that was one of the defensive nuggets on the Niners last week. And there's been talk, is Jimmy Ward happy with his being used as a nickelback? And I saw, Grant Cohn tweeted the Niners are costing him money by using him as a nickelback. And Armstead, Kyle Shanahan can't even articulate what his injury is because it's the foot and it's the heel and they kind of connect. And I stay out of it, all that type of stuff. Greenlaw, Alshire, like the guys who are beat up and not practicing or partially participating is long.